Everybody I think knows Laurie Garland. She's our business manager extraordinaire. And she's worked for Wyndham Central back in the Frank Recker days for 20 years?
I've been with Wyndham Central about 15.
15. Okay, I was not that far off.
No?
I wasn't going by the age. I was just going, I thought she started when she was 5. So I was giving her 20 years. So she prepared a budget based on everything being the same in Dover and Wardsboro, with the exception of there's some money added for professional development in Wardsboro because we're doing the focus study over there. And then obviously things that increase, i.e. tuition, health insurance, anything that may increase. So basically she looked at, well, why don't you just...
Sure, yeah,
I'm
okay,
sorry.
so why don't we talk about the budget process first, and what my process was to get to this point, the first draft. So I took the two FY19 budgets from Wardsboro and Dover and combined them and entered them into the new River Valleys School District budget into the new accounting system with the new accounting codes. So everything's new. I made adjustments based on what was happening in fiscal year 19. So of course, you know, you have to build your budget ahead of time and things change, staffing changes. So I made some adjustments based on what's actually happening now. I updated the budget that you are currently have in your hand with the WCSU superintendent's budget, special ed, and agency fund assumptions. They are not, that is not an approved budget as of yet, but that's been updated with the most current. I met with the principals briefly to discuss this budget. We haven't had a lot of time to really dig into it, you know, but we will through the process. I updated the budget with the tuition projections for the 7th through 12th graders for fiscal year 20. So that was my process to this point so far. The next steps in the process will be to pull the fiscal year 18 actuals and check those against our assumptions for fiscal year 20 after the audit is complete in each town. Then we'll make updates as they become necessary. New teacher healthcare assessment. I'm not sure if you're all aware, but when there's a new teacher that comes on board that has not paid into the state teacher's retirement system, the state now charges actually a one-time fee for retirement, but they also charge an ongoing fee to fund the health care of $1,300. So that list actually came out after I had printed this budget. So that'll be in the next draft. And then the assumptions, the vocational 6-semester averages, those will be updated as the state gives us that information as well. So then I thought we could talk a little bit about the structure of the budget and how to read it, sort of a little lesson in what things mean as far as codes are concerned. So the budget is broken down by level, educational level. So you'll see pre-kindergarten is first, your elementary is second, secondary, and then there are some expenses that are district-wide. And then it's broken down by department. So you're always going to see your direct instruction, which is, if you look on the page 1 of the budget detail, which is this sheet here, you'll see that Department 1101 always equals direct instruction. Okay. So to read this first section, it's basically, this is your direct instruction in pre-K. This is both for Dover and Wardsboro, which is River Valleys. And then it's broken down by account code, which is basically your salaries are the 5100 series, your benefits are 5200 series, and so on. There's a couple of account codes that you'll see throughout. Somewhat significant because it means they're coming from another budget. So the SU assessment, you will see, which is on line 20 on page 1. And this is for pre-K. This is for your early childhood special education costs. All of special ed is through the SU, so this is an assessment that comes back to you. And that is a 5593. So you'll see a 5593 throughout this budget. You'll also see a 5591, which is purchase service. So this purchase service is also from the SU, and it's in what we call at the SU level our agency fund. So you're buying into a service. So those are some things as we walk through the budget to keep in mind as you look at it. And then if we just want to go back to the summary sheet for just a second, the River Valley's district year-over-year budget comparison. And we'll just talk through, with this being draft one, some of the major increases and decreases through the budget. So the overall budget is $5.3 million, and your combined budgets for fiscal year 19 was 4.9, almost 5. So you can see that there's an increase of $381,000, which represents about 8%. Then I did a breakdown here of what those increases were. So there were some salary changes and staffing changes in both districts. We added some PD funds, particularly for Wardsboro. And there were some change in the assessments that came over from the SU. So for instance, the special ed costs and triple E costs are up by $88,000. So out of that 125 that you see there, 88,000 of it is from special ed. So a good portion of that is an increase there. $44,000 this is going to be an in and an out, so this actually does not affect your tax rate at all. But so in essence, really your budget's up about $340,000 because this is paid to the vocational centers by the state. So you'll see it in a revenue. And Marco he sees revenue coming in like that. Actually, no, you don't see the revenue coming in. It's just actually a journal entry that I make. So, or that I will.
Well, it's something that's been going on for years,
Yeah.
like 20 years, so
Right.
it's nothing new to budgeting.
It's not new to budgeting, except that it was missing out of both of your budgets.
No, we've had it in ours.
You have had your portion, so it's broken into two. And so it's mainly because it's a revenue and an expense. So that's why it didn't maybe get budgeted in the past. And it didn't in Wardsboro as well.
Really?
So it's not.
I remember putting it in there.
It's the portion that you have to pay is in there. I think it was $22,000 roughly about. Yeah.
Look at it, it's right there.
So there's two sections to it. There's on behalf, and then there's the LEA portion. It's the on behalf that I'm talking about here. And then, of course, your biggest increase was in tuition students. There are, correct me if I'm wrong, Matt, there are 20 sixth graders?
19.
19, okay. Potentially 20, maybe? I thought I had 20 in my head. And 11 12th graders, so you've got a swing there of 9. So yeah, there's some increases there. I also increased the private tuition by 3%, as this typically happens. And then there were some reductions as well. Some reductions in the payroll services. So that actually offsets part of the increase in assessments, because now with Wyndham Central doing the books for River Valleys, your assessment went up there as well. So there was some offset to that. Reduction in audit services, and actually a reduction in transportation, because we, at Wyndham Central, the transportation had not been reconfigured for a number of years based on ADM, and so we did that this year and actually dropped Wardsboro, who buys into that transportation, it dropped them significantly, so because of the reduction in students over the years. And then actually overall, healthcare actually went up 12%, but you can see that I'm actually showing a decrease in benefits. So River Valleys was able to absorb that because of different plans based on different staffing changes. You know, and that always can change. People change plans, change, you know, new staff, happens all the time. So that's the basic outline of the budget. I think we can probably just go down through, and anybody, if they have questions, we can go down page by page and talk through it.
Laurie, just because it keeps repeating itself, would you be able to go through an example of what a purchase service is so that everybody, you know, has
Sure.
a better understanding?
Yes. And to do that, you would need to see the agency.
Like for
fund.
music, let's say music band, for example.
Right. So at Wyndham Central, we have what's called the agency fund. And the agency fund, actually, Rich does a great job at telling everybody about it. So I think that it's basically when you can't employ a full-time person, we share costs. So those are all coming over from the agency fund, which is
Right.
the Wyndham Central.
Right.
So music, for instance, represents, instrumental music represents a .20 in River Valleys, and which is actually, if you look on, I think it's the last section of the budget, the statistical information. I believe I have that on there on the second page. Yeah, so on the second page, these are all the purchase
Right.
service, and this was actually Rick's idea to get those together so that people could see them. And then what the FTE is at that
Right.
particular school.
No, that's very
That make
helpful.
sense?
Yep,
Okay.
thank you.
One of the things, Marco, and we talked about it usually town meeting, but I think the agency fund stuff is one of those things that kind of upsets us because that's an example of Act 46 that we've been doing here long before I was ever on the board.
Right.
And I think it's a really good program because it allows us to have good, consistent people, not people that are just in a job long enough that they can get a full-time, because it
Right.
provides them with that full-time job and security.
Right.
And, you know, when we go to other places and talk about it, I don't know how many other school districts in the state do it, but when we testified before the Senate, they looked at us like we had three heads.
Right.
When we talked to people in Guilford about it, because they came to us and asked us about it, you know, and I thought it was something Frank Rucker had developed. And I said, well, your business manager that you stole from us is the one, which was a good thing, is we
no,
got
this
Laurie.
is really
there.
helpful to see it like this, because usually, like, you know, now when we get the invoice from you, you know, the way it's broken out, it's just, it's different. This is better.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I'm hoping with the new
Yeah.
system,
Right.
you won't see the bills anymore so much.
right.
You'll see them.
No,
but
but
not
this is
processed.
definitely an improvement in how it's presented, so it's right here. You know,
Right.
it's not in that sort of archaic format that,
The other thing we do too, Marco, just so you know, is we approve budgets for the superintendent's office. We approve, there's 5 superintendent's budgets. 4.
Four.
There's the administrative budget, there's 2 special ed, but there's the special ed, and then there's triple E, and then there's the agency fund. And we approve the first 3 usually in November, December, because those are pretty much fixed numbers, but we approve the 4th one, the agency fund, after town meeting, so that in case somebody's budget gets cut, they're not locked into that, because they may say, well, okay, if we have to, you know, cut 100,000 out, it allows them to look at those items, where if we had already voted on it, it would be set and fixed, and we couldn't vary it.
okay. Thanks.
But it's just, and again, you know, with the business office too, it shows all the numbers she has to play with. I mean, you know,
It's a tremendous amount.
Yeah.
Detail.
yeah.
So, you know, I think that if we just look at page 1, does anybody have any questions?
Pre-kindergarten special ed triple E, that's everybody, right? That's not just pre-K, right? That's anybody that needs services there.
So
Is in
in
the
line
district.
20, you're talking about?
Yes.
So line 20 is only the students that are not in kindergarten yet, that are in a special ed program.
Okay, but it can be anybody, right? Age 0 to, right?
0
Doesn't need to
to
be somebody
5
that's,
years
doesn't need to be
11.
somebody that's in the building.
No, that's correct.
That's why it says
Right,
pre-K
yes,
there.
it could be an outside placement, it could be, yes.
Okay.
Right.
Just so that's clear. That's
right.
why that number vacillates so much.
Right, and one thing I wanted to point out, actually, that does, that's a good call, right, because last year neither of you, I'm gonna think this through, I believe I'm right in saying this, neither of you had actually a triple E assessment last year because we were able to absorb all of the costs through grants, but this, because of the early childhood special education, has actually doubled their numbers. And so that's why we're seeing a lot more. So we've had to assess it out.
Just that some people will ask that, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It seems like a lot for pre-K,
Yeah,
but it's everybody below.
right. It's everybody they could be outside of the building, yes, if they're receiving special ed services.
Correct.
So one thing to point out on line 16, so this is what you're paying for Act 166. And this number will probably change. We don't actually have the count yet, because it's so early, to find out who are the 3 and 4-year-olds that are actually at an outside pre-K that the 10 hours a week are going to. Last year, I think it was about $3,100 per student. So that would represent basically 2 students. I'm sure that there's more out there. And again, when I start to look at the actuals for this year and for last year, we'll hone in on that number.
But it's a good placeholder.
Yeah, yeah. And, I know that Dover has a 3-4-year-old program. Wardsboro's possibly looking at 3-year-olds too, so it may be that they come there instead of going out.
Is that accounted for in this budget?
There was an increase in para support for 3-year-old program at Wardsboro. Yes, that is represented on line 7. Any other questions on the first page? Second page. Page 2. So this is continuing on with the elementary K through 6 direct instruction. One thing to note on line 43 is you'll see that I zeroed out the technology hardware, which are fixed assets. So this is moved to the SU. The technology budget is now part of the agency fund, so that we're grouping all of the technology so that the resources can be dispersed where they need to be.
No, good, thanks.
Then, as you'll see, the department numbers are going to start to change here. So we actually have assigned department numbers across the whole SU. So, for instance, if I wanted to know how much Wyndham Central is spending on art, I can pull that number up in all of the different districts' databases and come up with a number for you.
Do you explain to everybody how much effort and time you guys have put into changing these codes? And we're one of the first districts to really...
I actually think we're the first district that's using the budgeting system in the state. Because I'm part of a cohort of people or SUs that are implementing, and they're not quite where we are right now. So I know my cohort is not using the budgeting system except for us. So, and they were the only ones that were scheduled to.
I think the important thing about this is, other districts that are combining are gonna, for 1 year, work under their old system, and then they're gonna have to learn a whole new. And, Laurie recommended, and everybody agreed that some of the merger money go towards her office. And it made a lot of sense because now we're gonna start right off with this new system. So it's not gonna be, everybody will be used to it by year 2, where other groups are gonna have year 1 with a different system, year 2 with a new system. So they'll be 3 or 4 years before they're really down, and we'll be able to do some real good comparison stuff right off.
Yeah, I mean, this literally is in the system, so on July 1st, I hit, okay, approved budget, and it moves over to the accounting side, and we start, dispersing funds. So it's not, I won't have to enter it in,
One thing to note, and Laurie, has filled me in on how this system works, and it's a really impressive system. Everybody's going to be a stakeholder in this. So I will have access to this. That's how I will see things moving throughout the system, being able to approve invoices and money going out the door. But one of the main key features of this is that it starts at the beginning. The teachers are going to have to now own their line items.
right?
Okay, so it won't be, here's a stack of receipts, can I get reimbursed, or go order these books through Scholastic. It's going to be a lot more, they're going to be more involved. But, so I think it may take a little, learning on their part, a little bit of a curve there in the beginning, but it'll be well worth it. It'll make Laurie's life and her staff a lot easier.
Well, and there's a lot of budget control
Mhm.
when you are starting
Right.
from a requisition. And I have, so one of my staff is basically learning the requisition system really well. So, her and I will be coming around to every school and doing trainings with the teachers. And we're creating SOPs and so that we can.
Right. This is how the real world operates, so this is good in
You mean,
that.
Marco, the school system is in the real world?
It is.
Yeah,
Marco,
I mean, it's a learning curve, but I think, we are a learning institution, right? So I believe that we can do it.
So just as an example though, and I think Marco can fill us in, I remember Patty Westlake and Mary Lou and probably Marco, after town meeting, how many hours did you spend inputting the budget we approved into the program to get all the numbers?
Right now, very little because I've automated it. But
Oh, okay.
in the beginning, yeah, it was a big deal, but now that I've we've done some centralization of it, and once you start something at the beginning, the whole thing just falls into place. So it's,
That's why
Yeah.
I thought your point was
Yeah.
really good. Once you build the budget, you put
Yeah.
the budget. Where I know before they used to spend, a few days trying to get the stuff together.
Right.
So,
Right, so, progress. Any other questions on page 2? Great, moving right
Maybe
along.
Lori,
Yes.
for our own edification, when we get to things like art, can we put down how much that is? Is it 0.2, is it point? Is it-
You mean so that's on
Yeah.
the statistical information?
I don't know where exactly you put it, but.
no, she put it in statistical.
Oh, did you? Okay,
on-
okay, sorry.
Yeah, it's on the
I didn't
second
get to that
page
point.
here.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
So I had to, in order to do this budget, I had to learn a very powerful IBM tool called Cognos, which is a report writing tool. And I'm very excited about it. And I'm still learning it. I'm in the very early stages of it. So I'm hoping by the time we go to print, I can get this so that it's portrait, not landscape, to go into the town reports.
This one has 2.
So page 3.
Because that's what you want to
Something to point out, line 71, this again is your special ed primary. So this is what your special ed costs are from the SU as a total for the primary ages. Okay, and this involves all students, whether they're in the building or not.
K through 6.
K through 6, correct. Co-curricular is another spot that probably should be pointed out. So this is mainly Dover's summer program. So those should look familiar to you, Matt, those amounts of money. And then if you go down to line 78, this is the $14,000 is the cost for the 21C program at Wardsboro, or the local share of that grant. Okay. We have the guidance, the school nurse.
Hey Lori, going back real quick though, back to Rick's point, so, you know, if this is what we're gonna publish,
Yes.
would it be, how, could we put in the, how hard would it be? Do you have to manually enter in the notes, like, where you put teachers, you know, guidance, you know?
I do
one
have to
point?
manually enter them
Okay.
in, but I think by the time we get to the final version, and that's when I'll do it.
Okay.
So,
Okay, great, yeah.
I'm just thinking for somebody to just
Yeah.
look at it and not have to go back and reference.
actually, if you looked at Wardsboro's budget from last year, it has the FTEs in a column right next to it.
Okay.
So I'm used to doing that. I'm not gonna do it on every version that I,
No, that's cool.
until we get to the
Perfect.
end.
That's great.
Okay.
Okay. Until I can figure out how to manage the note piece of that kind of software. All right, so if we, you know, this is pretty standard. If we slide down to 93 and 94, this is professional development, and this is a shared pool of money, the 5331 account code on line 93. So both Matt and Tammy will have access to this money for admin-directed professional development. Okay. And then because Wardsboro is still part of the WCSU master agreement, there is a cost to that pool of teacher-directed money that is in that agreement. So that may change over time when they have their own agreement, but it's in there for now. The next section, 96 through, right here, 100, is the IB, and also, so this is like the focus money, I guess is what we should call it. You know, Dover has their focus, Wardsboro has their focus. So this is where they're going to increase the capacity of the teachers through this section.
Because line 99 is specific for the Wardsboro building.
It is, for their focus, right?
Right.
The library media services, that's all coming over from the agency fund. Then we have the principal's office, again, combined. And
Matt, don't get excited.
yeah. And then,
I saw that 83,000 clerical, I was like, yeah.
So that's for two principals?
No, it's like 1.5.
1.5 and 2 clerical. One thing I want to mention that I didn't mention at the beginning is substitutes. So you didn't, typically when you see a budget, you see, you know, the direct instruction, you see substitutes. Substitutes is actually down in the West River, I'm sorry, West River, I'm in the wrong district, River Valleys section, because we can do it with one account code, and the state doesn't care to report on substitutes. So that's why that's down there, just to happen to think of that on the way. Operation of buildings. Now this does not include any capital improvement money to move to capital fund, just
Dwight's
so
gonna work on
everybody's
that
clear.
for you.
Okay, well that's, I just want to be clear, that's without any capital improvement money. There's upkeep and grounds. Again, just coming from the two budgets combined. The 2711 on line 158 is transportation. For whatever reason, the way it comes through on the report, it doesn't say transportation, it just says resident student,
I was looking
which
all
is,
over that. So
yeah.
That's 158?
Yes, 158, it is transportation. I'm working to try to get that changed, but it's not that is actually from the AOB. So that isn't something I necessarily have control over. So this, of course, is the bus driver and bus drivers. And then if you keep going down, you'll see on line 169, this is the primary, again, only for primary students, the purchase service from the SU, which is for Wardsboro students being transported. So the next section is food service operation, and this one is a little bit different maybe than the way you've seen it in the past, so let me sort of back up and explain it. So in the past, because I've prepared Wardsboro's budget before, I'll explain it from their standpoint, is that they had their revenues and their expenses in the general fund, okay? Food service really should be in a separate fund because it is a special revenue type of operation. And we all know that that there is usually, the revenues don't equal the expenses, and so there's a contribution from the local public. And so that is what we're estimating once we move the food program over to the next fund. This is what we're estimating to be the gap, or the contribution from the local public between the revenues and expenses. So then next you'll start, now we're into secondary. So you'll see the summaries, 11 represents elementary. So you can see your $2.4 million in elementary, K through 6. Does not include pre-K at that point. So secondary, this is where we have on line 177, other professional services, there's some 504 costs. That is also in here that are paid to different private schools for 504 students. And then we have the breakdown of the tuition. 183 is where the secondary special ed costs come in. So just to give you a sort of a visual, I think, if you add the two together and you looked at Wyndham Central's special ed budget, you'd be able to see the total amount. And the way it's broken out is by student, by IEPs, is how we break it between primary and secondary. And then you see the vocational education, then that these numbers will be changing as we get more information from the state. And then again, that resident students, the 2711, which is transportation for secondary.
What was that?
That is line 188.
Okay.
Okay. So 31, as you see on line 190, level 31 represents your secondary at 2.4 million. So now we get into things that could be, or not could be, are shared through river valleys. So, and I laugh because when I say this, because Rich he'll understand this, but in the beginning, we thought that everything, that there would be no separation, right? But because of the way that the state has to report to the federal government, behind the scenes, there are different codes in here for Wardsboro and Dover school buildings, because that's the way the state has to pull the information. So the board.
Before you leave, remind me to talk to you about that.
Okay, so the Board of Education, here is, that's where the SU assessment, which is the superintendent's budget, comes through. And again, that's combined. And any other types of things that the board spends money on.
So now your SU assessment though, if you're putting it through the Board of Ed, then you're not breaking that down by building.
Nope, we don't have to do that.
You don't have to do it for that one.
No.
Okay.
Mainly the building costs need to be from the AOE's direction. Salaries, benefits, and building costs. Anything where there's payroll certainly has to be broken out for them. Other than that, they are somewhat flexible. Then we have the treasurer and the, actually, it's not 2 treasurers, the other one should say clerk. I don't know why that-
Yeah, Marco, don't get excited.
I don't know why that didn't
You know,
update.
I was cashing, spent it already.
Duh.
Turn it back.
Does FICA come out of that as well, on line 202 and 203?
Yeah, those,
Okay, but you don't show it in here.
I don't, it's as a single line item, because I wasn't sure how that, if you would be paid through payroll or if it would be a stipend, so.
Gotcha.
Because,
Yeah, I'll
yeah,
just-
we'll talk about
Yeah.
that, but it may show up there, yeah. So then audit, the audit cost has gone down, will go down for River Valleys. Some legal services, again, combined. And then you have the technology that's coming over from the SU. And then line 211, this 2590 is actually the note taker, the minute taker. It has,
Which Matt gets cashed in tonight.
yeah.
Not the whole 4,100 though.
Yeah, that's coming over from the agency fund because we pay Peter Barris out of the agency fund because he actually takes notes for several different districts, so at this point it's Peter. So that is your budget. We can talk about the,
Well, let's stick with this for right now.
Okay.
Does anybody have any major questions, comments, that they're lost, they don't understand it?
Say nice job.
Yeah,
oh, thank you.
I have a question.
Shoot.
So, you guys know the secondary education, you said you raised it based on 10 students. As you know, in Wardsboro, we were substantially over budget last year. Did you take that into consideration for this one?
I did, I built that on what we know for students right now and where they're going. So I actually have, somewhere, I have,
And we'll get this from Ed towards the end, we'll get a cheat sheet that will show
Yeah.
how she came
I
up
know,
with
just,
that number.
yeah, she knows we've been Wardsboro in the last 2 years.
Right.
Way
Yeah.
over budget on those 2 items.
But the problem is you can have 5 new kids move in and then you're screwed.
And this is the.
Yeah.
it was
it's
way
also
over.
helped to create a nice situation for you as well.
Right, right, well,
With a
it's nice to be
fairly
under
low
budget, but-
tax rate, so.
Right, that's true too.
Actually, you're in a win-win situation there.
Right, that's true.
This is based on 135 students. Of course, some are going to public schools, 86 are going to public. We have 43 at private and 6 out of state. So those numbers could change because we don't know that all 19 students are going to go to private, but that's where we budgeted them. So that, it could come in a little cheaper too.
And as I always say at every town meeting, if I could predict 18 months down the road exactly what's gonna happen, you don't think I'd be sitting here, do you?
No,
Educated guess,
I know where you'd be.
Yes,
Yeah.
with my harem.
Is there transportation for secondary in here as well?
Yeah.
There is, yeah.
It's funny
Not,
when you
oh yeah,
say
right there it
that.
is, right there. Okay.
Yeah,
Number
and
shows
I'm sorry, it's
different
not.
because
I wrote that, yeah, okay.
So what she did for secondary transportation was took what we're spending now
Yeah.
and kind of used those
Use that.
numbers as a placeholder.
Okay.
Remember, we're supposed to have a transportation group and they're gonna make some decisions, so I think that may have to change a little bit, but we just, for the first run through, she
Right,
needed some
right.
placeholders, some
Okay.
numbers to put
I
in.
did see that. Sorry about that. Thank you. That's it.
Lori, you got more comment?
I just have the statistical information if we just want to talk through
So
that.
can I just, before we go there, one of the things that burns my backside and that, they wanted us to become one district and yet we have to report separately. So I did talk at the end of the Wyndham Central meeting, when you left, I grabbed the 2 legislators that were there and I said, you need to talk to Laurie because this doesn't make any sense. And for us to have to report this way. And they didn't believe it either, but I had forgotten that it was the feds. I said it was the state was requiring it, but they really should talk about that because it seems ridiculous to make us do all this combining stuff and then still make you have to report separately because it seems to create more work.
It does create more work. It creates a lot longer chart of accounts than it could be. It really is, the way it's been explained to me, it is how the state of Vermont gets their money from the federal government is based on buildings, not necessarily districts. So I did find that to be true recently. I think every district got a REAP grant, which is a rural education grant. And that came directly from the federal government. It did not come through the state. And that REAP grant was based on actual individual schools. And so that does indicate to me that they really do need that information by school.
So Laurie, I'm gonna interrupt you too, so I don't know what time it is, 7:58 maybe? So we'll call the meeting to order now at 7:58. So we're now officially a meeting. So Laurie, you wanna explain the budget now?
I'd be happy to have a one-on-one with Laura.
No, we're gonna beat her up in a minute about that
Okay.
individual, about reporting.
Does she have a?
Yes, I just gave her one.
Okay.
Okay, so go ahead, you want to go over the statistical, so the pretty graph, and I'm just gonna cover for Rick. Rick's packet didn't have one, because one of the other packets had two.
All right.
I got one now.
It wasn't
All right.
Rick's
Can I
fault.
ask one question, Laurie? Do you know what last year's ADM was, total combined between both school districts?
For the SU or for the
No,
district?
for this school district.
For the two.
So it
the two.
depends on what
For the two,
ADM you're
yes.
looking at. So if I were to look at the superintendent's
This was
budget, I
just
can
her
give you a
notes.
number, but
This is just kind of
You don't have to give it to us now, but
Yeah, I'll
just
come back.
if you could come back and tell
Yeah,
us,
we're
that, just
still
so we can
working.
say,
The
we were
proposed
280,
budget
we're 281 on this
versus
budget,
last year's
and
two budgets.
how many were we, how
yeah,
many
that,
did we
no,
budget
that
once
would
prior?
be a
increases.
statistic I bring in.
Mhm.
We're still
And then
working through the
this is a line item
ADM because the
description,
collection is not
which
done
we
yet.
just went over.
Okay.
Still up in the
But
But
air.
I guess I'm more interested in
And
what
this is
we
what you
budgeted
quoted.
based on for ADM for this current year that we're in,
Okay, for fiscal year 19.
for this year that we're in.
Sure, I can get that information for you.
Okay, that would be great.
Laura, you went over too, I may have walked out, but you went over that little sheet where you showed the total budget you're proposing and then the breakdown of the two
I
schools.
did.
Okay.
Yeah, Dave, any have any questions on that summary sheet?
I just think that it's a pretty good that combining, we're within the ballpark of a normal increase, because if you level fund the budget, I think the inflation rate this year is rather high, isn't it?
Like COLA's like 3 times something.
Yeah, so, I think, if we had no increase, if we level funded, we would be cutting the budget really by over 3%. So I think that it's not a bad looking budget on the first run through.
So the statistical data that I prepared there, this sort of gives not sort of, it does give the FTEs and the breakdown of, again, remember your department numbers, so if you have a question on what a department number means, I didn't put in the titles there because it would get so long, but the top grid is basically all of the salaries that are paid through this budget. So that represents $1.4 million. And then the second grid down is your benefits throughout the whole thing. Again, that will change up and down. And then the tuition. This does not include, I see, well, it's because it's not really tuition. Yeah, it does not include the $25,000 for 504. But that's not really a tuition, those are really services that the student gets.
No, you came late for being fine. No, good.
Century.
The 25,504, that's not included.
Not included in this graph, but it is included in the total budget.
Just so everybody knows, Rick and I met with Laurie just because it was a new budget, and both Rick and I have had experience with the budgets. So we just asked if we could break, because one of the things we've always talked about is that there's really very little we have control over, and I think the graph really kind of shows it. The biggest chunk of money, 41%, is to tuition, and we can't tell a school, don't give us, charge us less tuition. And 35% is to actual salary and benefits. And when you have the 15% for your assessments, there's really 9% of the budget is kind of stuff that we can. And I know Laura for years has always said, we always wind up taking the tuition and all our other fixed expenses and balancing it on the back of what happens in our elementary buildings, because that's really the only place we have any control.
Yeah, that's a good point. And then the second page is just the purchase services and the SU assessment, and I applied the FTEs where it was applicable, so.
I think Laurie did an excellent job and need to be
Thank you.
commended. And I think for a confusing, oh, I'm sure there's gonna be a lot of things we missed and can
Okay.
tighten up numbers on.
Yeah, and I just saw that.
But does anybody have any questions for Laurie? Yes, you can ask questions, but if
I
she's
know.
already answered
Then
them,
I
we're
don't,
gonna
right.
beat you.
Yeah, well, and you can
Just
keep
ask.
moving.
It's
So, just really quickly, salary calculations are, increase in salary calculations are based on,
Just
I guess.
a guess.
what is the guess?
Well, it doesn't matter.
Okay,
We don't want to know.
all right. And transportation is,
This year's.
so it's 100, it's not 110 or 75?
No,
Is that
she's,
correct?
110, I think.
Yeah.
I
Oh, it's
was
110?
directed to do.
right.
Okay.
But it's based on what we're providing this year for next year. There would be no changes in transportation. Everything we're doing this year will be done next year.
Including no
Everything.
increased cost.
No, 10% increase.
So, but what's interesting,
There's
Laura,
a decrease
is
then.
it's actually a decrease because in Wardsboro buys their transportation from West River and through the agency fund at the SU level.
Yeah.
And that calculation had not been reconfigured in many years. So we reconfigured it based on ADM, and so it actually dropped Wardsboro's assessment. So even though I budgeted 110%, it actually reduced the budget overall for transportation because Wardsboro's went down. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Okay.
yes. And if I ask a question that you've already covered, really just say, I'll catch you after. But I think that actually might be my, let's see, there's one more that I had, which was, special ed agency, did we talk about that already?
We did, but I
Increase.
can go over it again because it's probably a, you know,
So is this calculated on what our current practices are, or assuming new practices?
so we aren't in the, I'm not sure, we're not into the census modeling yet. So it's based on, it's what we call the bridge methodology for special ed costs. So in previous years, every cost was basically charged at the SU level back to the district, okay, back to the individual districts. With the new accounting system, it doesn't make it basically at the SU level so that you can do that. So the way the new accounting system works is the SU level, they want very broad and not based on, you know, this cost goes to this school and this cost goes to that school. At the district level, they do. It's very interesting. But it makes sense when you roll it up for reporting wise. But anyway, the SU level, this year for special ed, we did do the service plan like we always have to by law. And we appropriated the costs, the expenses for special ed by district, which now, using the new districts. And then that became a percentage. So, for instance, if you were to look at the SU budget for special ed, which you do not have, which hopefully will get up on the website soon. Well, hopefully it'll be approved at the next board meeting,
If we can have a board meeting.
if we can have a board meeting.
If Laura would show up,
Be in 3 places at once.
why not?
So based on gross costs, River Valley's has almost 12% of the total special ed costs. So for a SU-wide, we spend $5.6 million on special ed. Of that $5.6 million, after you back out EEE, 12% belongs to River Valley's. Okay.
To River Valley students.
To River Valley students, correct. So then it goes, you know, obviously it has to go through all the formula calculations, and then there's a net cost. That's what you're seeing in here, is the net cost.
For
Net
our students
For-
in this SU, or in this district.
For River Valleys.
And this was approved by the WCSU's
Yeah.
board back in August or September.
September 26th, right?
I think you may have been at that meeting.
So,
Well, I know we've got a moving target on this discussion, so I just want to make sure I know where we are.
right, so why it's called the bridge methodology is because it's not like it used to be, and it's not the census model yet, but it's getting us to the census model. Because at the end of the year, let me back up. So what's typically happened with special ed is we do several calculations throughout the year to see where a district's going, their expenses. If a para moves from this district to another district, we have to make all those different calculations and move them in the accounting system, all of that, right? And then we say, okay, that district's going to come out, $20,000 to the good, or maybe $20,000 to the bad. We send a bill, or we give them a refund. Okay, so that's not going to happen in this fiscal year 20 model, because now at the end of the year, if there's a surplus of, let's say, $200,000 in special ed, then River Valleys will get 12% back of that surplus. And if there's a deficit, they will assume 12% of the deficit. So, as we move to the funding, the census funding, which is being discussed at a different level.
So surprises will be costly for all.
For all. So that's why I say it's the bridge model, because it's sort of taking us to a model where we share costs, right? So let's say let's run a scenario. We say that West River has a very expensive student that comes into the district that is residential and costs $250,000. You will be, if the whole special ed budget goes over, then you will pick up 12% of that.
So as an example, West River is 65.1% of the special ed. So it's very big for them, and River Valleys is actually 17.5. Marlboro is 15.1.
Where are you, 17.5?
We're 17.5. It says, at least on this one I have it, is.
Oh, no, that's, well, I'll have to look at it.
Oh, I'm
I
sorry.
I see 11.58.
No, I was on,
Stat sheet.
I was on this year, yeah.
Okay, all right.
No, so for allocation, so it's even worse, because West River's at 70.14. So if West River's really looking, if there's a $1 million increase, West River's responsible for 70% of it. That's huge. Is that right?
Yeah.
And this is, I feel like I've missed the conversation I have at the SU. Is this conversation still ongoing at the SU?
No, this is settled for this year, but it's a one-year gap plan, bridge plan. We are meeting currently, we just met in Newfane, we just talked about that. You
Yeah,
weren't here.
okay, great.
So
Don't
we're
rehash
looking
it,
at
don't
doing
rehash it.
like more of an insurance policy thing where we will all share equally in the costs, but you have to do certain things to be part of that sharing. And everybody seemed to be pretty on board with it, so we're gonna flush that out better in probably February or March. But we had some really good meetings, and I would definitely recommend that people pay attention to it, because I think it seemed to be something everybody was agreeable with and everybody felt comfortable. From administration, special education, we have a parent on the committee, we have 3 Marlboro board members, and we have 4 or 5 other board members, chairs.
Actually, a very good representation.
Yeah, we have a person from Wardsboro, from your current board, not the River, Jamaica board, Dover, Newfane, Leland and Gray, and then we also had, we had 3 from Marlboro, right?
Right.
1, 2, 3.
So because I know I probably won't be here in January or February for those discussions, or that there's a chance that I won't be, I just want to stress again that we do not want to create systems where we are separating people financially from their decisions. So if we're all in to pay, then we all have to be in on mitigation and
that's-
planning.
No, and that's what
And
the
if we're
plan
not
is.
all in on mitigation and planning,
Exactly.
then we're not all in.
And that was where the discussion was going. It's like when you get an insurance policy and they come and do an inspection and they say, okay, well, you're gonna pay this much for your building insurance, but we want you to add smoke detectors here and railings there. Wyndham Central has the ability to say, okay, this is what we need to do. And if you do what is recommended by the curriculum coordinator, the special educator,
This is for me.
yeah, then you get, your thing is that you participated in that. You're doing what you're supposed to do, so we'll all share the cost.
Great.
If you want to go on your own way and do something different,
Yeah.
you can, as long as you get approval from the curriculum coordinator and the special administrator, and there's a time period. It's, so nobody, Matt
you
can't
pay.
say, hey, I just went to a class and I found out that if I leave all the kids outside with no coats on for 2 hours on the coldest day, it's gonna solve all my special ed problems. And if they don't agree, if the central office doesn't agree to it, then Matt can't do it. If Matt decides to do it, then that building is on its own and they don't get to share in the benefits of everybody sharing the costs. Correct?
That's very good, yeah. I think the issue will be how to break that out from an accounting standpoint.
But so we're hoping that everybody buys in and follows what they're supposed to do,
That's
and
right,
there's no
yeah,
issues.
it really actually was very positive.
It was the best, it was the most, everybody's been in agreement on this topic in a lot of years, I thought. Okay, everybody good?
I'm good.
Okay.
So just, while we got Laurie, so I kept telling you guys I would get you this, and I finally just found it. I've really been looking for this, and it was right in the book. There's a sheet of paper, it says Dover School Capital Vehicle Fund, and then there's another little graph below, it says Dover School Capital Building Fund. Do you have one of those, Laurie? Did
I
Matt
don't
give you?
have
Do you have an extra one?
one. Oh, is it right here?
So this is what we used to do, but because we were just putting money away, it didn't really matter. So if you look like FY15, we had 61,000 in the vehicle fund. And then we have 2 buses, one was an 06 at that time, one was a 2010. We were funding 10,550 every year. I did simple interest because I'm not a mathematician at 1.5%. So the ending balance. Then the following year, we bought a bus for $90,000, so we actually went into a little bit of a deficit. You have one?
Nope.
Oh, Matt. pass
Oh, it's
it
right
on.
here.
Oh, here it is. No, I have one. Sorry.
No, so, and then the following year, we started with a deficit, but we funded, so, and then I said we had to pay $10 in interest, which seems like a little cheap, but, and then, so then it carries forward, so that's kind of how we're building our funds, and that's how we came up with a number to put in. So if you, the true Chinese started this, capital fund thing, and it was, back in the 70s, and it was supposed to be, it was a 10-year moving number, and it was supposed to come out at 0 at the end. So your expenses at the end were supposed to, and your income was supposed to come out, you were supposed to zero it out. And we tried that on the town for things like the ladder truck at $1 million every 25 years, really skewed the number. So we basically said, there's no way we can come out at a 0 and have a realistic fund, because for 15 years, that piece of equipment doesn't show. So we actually, on the town side, extended them out to 20 years, or at least the last one I did. I don't know what Marco's done. What do we do now?
We go out to like 2022 or something like that, so 5
No, we gotta go
On
more
the-
than 5 years.
on the town side.
Okay. Yeah. So, basically, we were trying to do 10 years on ours. And then the building one, it's like, we just put money away, but we didn't really know. We also decided we weren't just gonna replace a roof because it's 20 years old, because that just didn't make sense. But we just figured that we would have enough money in there to replace the roof if we had to, so that we wouldn't have to, raise taxes. So we have pretty healthy reserves, as like Dwight was saying, because their tuition hasn't come as high as they budgeted. That's a really good reason to put money away. In Dover, we've had our nest egg ever since Act 60 and Act 68, and we play with it a little bit. Like one year we spent a lot because we had a whole bunch of new students going on to 7th grade and not that many leaving, so our tuition numbers jumped pretty high one year, but then the following year, we had a big class leave and a little class move up, so our numbers went down. And then again, remember, budget is just the best estimate. So, we in Dover went to different capital funds because we were nervous the state would just see a big pot of money and say, wow, that's our money, we want it back, you didn't spend it. So that's why we actually had at one time 4 reserve funds. We had the vehicle, the capital building, capital equipment, and then the general reserve. And the general reserve is the one we use kind of to bounce around, pardon? To, sometimes we'll fund out of that to, shoot for a tax rate. So for the last 20 years, probably not 20, since Act 68, we've gone to town meeting and said, we're gonna shoot for a tax rate, and then we back in the tax rate at the end of the year, because remember that voters only approve expenditures, they don't approve income. We get to create the income, and we do that, I'm telling all my secrets. Everybody I think knows our secrets, because we've done it before. But, so we usually back into it, so we'll do that with, we'll probably do that, nobody watches this, only the 4,000 people in California. So in May, we get to sit down with Laurie, Rick and I will be able to sit down with Laurie, and we'll be able to look at the numbers, and we'll know what legislature's gonna do, and I think, I don't know if Laurie and I just discussed it, or she said it in the meeting, where, like, they're supposed to have by December 1st, the ADM, weighted ADM, and now Brad James is saying, we'll be lucky to see it.
Well, it's by statute December 15th, but he said that it's not gonna happen because the longitudinal data system that the AOE changed over to is a disaster, so.
Oh, is that a quote?
Actually, I'm on camera tonight, but he, at the business managers meeting, said that the AOE screwed up. So, that is a quote. That is not anything I'm making up. So it's been a real chore to get a correct ADM. So anyway, we're working on it.
So again, when we go to town meeting, or when we go to our meeting, and we present this and people vote, we're voting in budget, they're voting in expenditures, they're not voting income. And again, we get to create, so we can guesstimate our interest, and, we can, so we have some leeway there. So I think, again, Laurie and I and Rick met just to go run through this, because we're both very familiar with our individual budgets. And I think we kind of came to the conclusion that maybe for the first year, it would be better to just have all the money go into a general reserve. And then, Dwight, when you get your calculations done for the building, we can put a chunk of money into buildings if there's stuff that needs to be done immediately, so we can kind of have a more level tax rate without having to jump things up. And when transportation gets their stuff figured out, Matt, our bus is in an 06 and a 10. They're like 2010s and 12, right? Or,
I think so. I don't know for sure, but I don't think there's an 06 out there.
no, I think that
there's
was the one that went away in Obama.
a 12, and I don't remember the year on the other one.
So, and we were hoping to get 10 years out of a school bus now, because we don't put them on, and we're buying real buses instead of buying vans that we paint yellow and say they're a truck. So hopefully we can maybe have a better feel after the first year.
All your secrets.
Pardon?
You're divulging all your secrets.
What's that?
Painting the van yellow.
Oh, yeah. So anyways, so I think maybe the recommendation may be that for the first year, we just do a general reserve, and we recommend, or do you want to?
Well, can I ask a clarifying question?
Yeah.
So, I pulled together some reserve funds, because Marco and I had met, and he printed off a bunch of things for me. Probably have changed a little bit since that
Maybe.
day. But I have actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 reserve funds. that
Well,
you would
some
do.
of them aren't really reserve
Fiber's
funds.
gone, yeah, I mean, those.
It's the Kingswood money, it's the
Is there a tax one?
fiber.
Fiber Connect, which we spent,
But there's still some left in it, because Bud's trying to get it back.
No, that's
no,
a
because we
negative,
had
actually.
we paid for something recently, it's like
Oh,
a
okay.
$9,000.
Yeah, because it's
Yeah.
a
Was that the
negative, so it
911?
probably needs money from someplace else.
Yeah.
Well, at least on the report.
Just get it from the town.
Yeah, but anyway, if you add up all of
Mm.
those, it looks like about 547,000, all those. Does that sound?
Yeah,
about
it's
right
just,
to you?
it's one, the reserves are just sub-reserves
Sub-reserves.
by category.
And so then Wardsboro, this isn't looking at fiscal year 19 and seeing where everybody's going to come out yet. But Wardsboro's most likely going to end the year with about $716,000 in total. That's reserve, that's their reserve fund, their capital fund, and their general fund, and then a small special revenue fund. They've already committed $81,000 to fiscal year 19 to level out the tax rate. So between the two, it's about 1.1.
But we
1.2.
don't know about our audit yet, right?
Let me follow up with, we have not gotten it final yet.
Yeah, so we haven't
Right.
figured out
Right.
FY.
Okay, and neither has Wardsboro. They don't have their audit yet.
Okay, so,
These are all preliminary figures.
okay, so what is your guys' recommendations then? Do we want to put some money in, do we want to recommend that some money go into specific reserves?
Can I ask a question?
Sure. Is it going to help them to answer
Yeah,
us?
is there a recommendation about reserve funds
Is that what I
right
just
now?
asked?
No. No, I mean like from the, not from you.
Right, from the AOE.
Is there guidance that you're hearing on, okay, then, so
No one gets this revision.
I think
There are
we should
some,
probably.
there are some supervisory unions that have several $1 million in
Oh.
reserves.
I think it's important for us to really think about what our going forward capital needs categories are going to be and probably allocate some of our funds into them.
I agree with that. The first thing that we need to do though is look at cash flow.
Mhm.
So, the combined monies to start
Mhm.
off July 1st.
Mhm.
We need to make sure that we, because I think that it's a little bit different in Wardsboro versus Dover as far as the teachers get paid through the summer. So, and their expenses through the summer that are accrued back to the fiscal year.
Mhm.
Dover pays their teachers 22 pays, so that doesn't happen. So I need to make sure we've got money first to cover all the expenses that are gonna happen this summer.
So a
Before the first
10%,
tax.
a 10% reserve on a $5 million budget is $500,000.
Right, so half of that, yeah.
Should
right.
go into a general reserve.
And
For
then,
cash flow.
Just for cash.
well, 500,000 should stay in our general fund for cash flow.
Okay.
And then it can be moved at town meeting day.
Right.
But the other amount could be dispersed based on, into different funds.
I am fine with whatever you end up recommending. The thing I don't want to do is indicate in any way, shape, or form that we have extra money laying around.
We don't.
No,
So I'd like to make sure that we are clear about
yeah, I get
what
what
it's
you're saying.
designated for.
So,
But there's a plan in place
Yes.
for them.
so let me go for this is a question for the board. Does the board want to have, so in Dover in the past, the board's always decided, because we've never really used central office financing, and we just always talked to the treasurer and kind of came up, the board's decided what to do. We don't just look after Dover's money anymore, we're looking after Dover and Wardsboro's money. So does the board want to make a decision, does the board want to make a recommendation and let them tell us that we're being dumb? Or do we want to ask them to make a recommendation to us? But I think it would be tough for them because unfortunately, Laurie doesn't have a lot of experience with the building and what's going on here. And, I think the board is the one that hired to have the reserve studies done. And I think, a lot of that is gonna be incumbent upon us to tell them, what the reserve study showed that we should be putting away at least for the buildings. And then, Matt knows the transportation, the buses, so, see where we're at with those. And if, we needed to replace one, at least have some money maybe assigned to that. And then we would have to ask both administrators, are there any building needs, equipment-wise? We did the whiteboards, the smart boards out of, like our reserve money. You know, because at the time, they were fairly expensive, we spent quite a bit of money, but it was something the teachers recommended. Is there something that the buildings are lacking that we should do now, and maybe assign some money towards that, even if we don't do it this year? But I know you guys have struggled with some water issues in the last year or two, and we have for the last couple of years.
Yeah.
You know, should there be some extra money put aside for those kind of issues? So who would decide that, and how do you guys, or how do we want to decide, or what?
It also comes down to how you want to, this, like a budget like this, you're starting out with a balance, and then you're spending each year at 15 years out. So do you want a level fund like you're suggesting, or do you want to, slowly decrease the fund over time?
No, I mean, I think we
So-
should always have money
So
aside.
if that's the case, then we can go with the recommendation of the engineer, exactly how, they're recommending exactly how much should be spent on a yearly basis with cost of living.
But, and even if we don't spend it, though, if we don't
It's gonna
spend it this
stay the
year,
same. It's
we
gonna
may
stay-
spend it the year after.
Well, right, it's gonna fluctuate, so you've always got it there.
So I can come it'll probably be in a couple of months with a recommendation about what I think that needs to be in the general fund for cash flow purposes. And then the balance you could come with a recommendation for the balance, does that make sense? So-
Yeah. Well, I mean, usually everything we've always seen from everybody's 10%. We know it's a $5.5 million budget, so if we do 550,000, I mean, should we just plan on that to start off with? Or do you think it may need
I
to
think
be
it
more?
can be less, no, I think it can be less.
But it doesn't hurt to be more,
Doesn't hurt to be more,
because then if 20 new students move in,
but,
we've got money, we don't have to go borrow and pay interest.
right.
Sure.
I
But
mean,
I think we've got a lot of things going on. I mean, you've got a
Right.
capital reserve, you've got cash flow, and we want to see what we're going to need to pay to keep the tax rates. I mean, there's a
Right.
lot of different things going on here. I don't think it's a decision we can make tonight. I think it's a
no, it is,
decision
my
in the next
question is,
60 or 90 days.
well, we've got about less than 60 days to decide it. Because I think it's something that we could bring up at the annual meeting, because that, I don't think, funding those or how we align that is not a ballot question. That's more of a question at the annual meeting.
Probably, yeah.
So.
It's not about expenditures, but I mean, if you are going to take the tax rate into consideration, and you want to pay down on that, it does impact that.
Yeah. And my thought on that is that can be discussed, because again, they don't vote.
They're voting on expenditures, correct?
Right, so we can just say, this is what, we'd like input on where you'd like to see the tax rate wind up. And then
But don't we have to allocate that amount of money in order to do that? We have to have the money there.
technically, a board does not need permission to spend capital money if it's meant for that, then it was determined
It's
to
meant for
be.
capital.
Right.
So I think we just need a number,
Yeah.
back from the engineering study.
Of course, the other thing too, we're not gonna have any income numbers even to guess at until
So,
after a budget's done.
right, so typically, when I present a budget, I would come next time with revenue assumptions, but I'm not sure that I'll be able to do that based on what we're not getting from the state. I can probably make some assumptions based on last year, and we can go forward and just then we'll see where we think the tax rate's going to come out. And then, Rick, in answer to your question, yes, then you can say, okay, well, we're not happy with that, so we want to use X amount of money to buy that down.
Exactly.
But, so that's my plan, is to come to you as probably next meeting, which I think is the 3rd, is it
Yes.
the 3rd? So the commissioner's letter is supposed to come out on the 1st, and that will have some information that I can use. So,
And we'll
the
get
all-important equalized pupil number is the one that won't come out until the end.
And CLA will come out.
The CLA might not come out on the 1st, and the equalized pupil will not, but I can,
But you can guess on
I
it.
can give you an estimate, yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Will the education rate be then the same for both Dover and,
Because the
course,
CLAs
it-
will be different.
right,
Right.
yeah,
So it's, it's a single tax
Right.
rate, and then you subtract the 8 cents.
right,
That is the incentive, and then that number goes through the CLA.
right.
in each
So
year.
the big number's gonna be the
Right.
same.
So, yeah, so next time I come, I'll have some amount of revenue assumption.
Okay, so what does the board need to do between now and then? Does Dwight need to work on his assessment stuff?
I can do that like tomorrow. I've got it all. It's already broken out. It's
So
already
why
determined.
don't at the next meeting, you give us a presentation, and then if Laurie's gonna be here, you can make sure she can see where we're thinking.
Yeah, that sounds
Okay.
good.
And then the other thing is, what else from the board? I think the assignment for the board over the next couple of weeks is to just review the budget, worry about this sheet that you gave us that has all the different little lines in green, and just see if there's any questions or any concerns or anything that seems out of whack. I think it's a pretty fair budget. I mean, I think it's one that we could submit to the voters and not have still be able to operate a couple of really good schools without having to worry for the first year.
So no changes tonight that anybody sees off the bat. I mean, I think that, Matt and I and Tammy and I need to still get together and make sure that things are the way we think they should be. So draft number 2 will be updated somewhat.
I just have 2 quick questions. The 1101 department number, the teachers, is that based on the current number of employed teachers, or did you guys change?
Which page are you on?
Well, it's in multiple lines. The department 1101,
Line 19, page 1.
salaries.
starts on line 6.
Right, so if you go to this page here, so we're talking about 13.5 FTEs is what you're...
What?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So in yes and no. It is increased by 1 interventionist, but there was a decrease in other places, so for that. So it is an increase of 1.0 teacher salary.
And then that's the 620531.
Is this what we're looking at? Excuse me.
No, it's the budget right here.
Yeah, right here.
So the 1101 is direct instruction. So there's several of them because there's the pre-kindergarten, K through 6. What?
Here?
Well, if you look at this page, actually,
Thank-
he's asking about FTEs. So
Okay.
this is the statistical data page, and this represents, so if you look at this, you'll see that the teachers in 1101 department,
Yeah.
which was your question,
Exactly.
the 13.5, is that the same number of teachers that we currently have between the 2 schools? And my answer was that it has been increased by 1.0, correct me if I'm wrong, for an interventionist, but there were decreases in other areas.
You also said there was a para in pre-K, right?
And there, yes, which shows up in line, well, it's on, again, on the
5121, right?
statistical.
So what is our number this year combined
Right here.
of staff? FTE for teachers?
22.9.
No, well, all teachers, that's all staff, that's not just teachers.
So 1101 is FTE teachers, not
Correct.
staff.
So Wardsboro did not change, so
Okay.
wasn't it 8.8, Matt? I don't have that number.
I'm not
With the
sure I
2?
completely understand the question. You want to know how many
Teachers
teaching
to-
staff there are this year?
Yes, so I heard Laurie say we've increased by an interventionist, but we've also decreased in other places. So I'm just trying to get a grasp on teachers, FTE. We're looking at 13.5 coming up. Combined this year, how many FTE did we have?
So this year for teachers, classroom teachers, we have 8.
Combined.
Combined, 8 plus 4.5, 12.5.
Okay, so we've gone up by 1 full-time interventionist,
Correct.
and what have we gone down?
Paraeducators.
And those are counted as teachers?
No, they're in paraeducators.
Okay, so our teaching staff is just net going up. It's not being reduced, but our overall staff is number. Now I'm confused. Okay. So total FTE for all staff coming forward, going in 20, is 22.9. And what was it this year, combined all staff in
I don't
both
have all
schools?
staff, I would have to go back and.
Is that a
pull
question
back
that
up.
somebody asked when I walked in? I didn't know that.
No, nobody's asked that question, and I would have to go back and count them all.
Well, basically,
for
we're pretty
last year.
much leaving everything the same. So if it's a little different, it's not a huge number. We didn't reduce, we didn't cut half the staff or anything.
No, but I'd like to
Yeah.
know.
So
I can get
I
that
will get you the
information for you.
Wardsboro town report, and we'll get you the Dover, and you figure it out. Oh, I'm not asking you, I'm just telling you.
Can I ask a follow-up, Zach? On this sheet,
Yes.
the increase of $62,052, does that include the interventionists as well as you say, salary increases and?
It includes partly, so this is looking at from budget to budget, not necessarily what actually happened this year. So
Okay.
for instance, there was a .5 pre-K teacher budgeted for fiscal year 19, but a 1.0 hired. So that's part of that increase.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, that's fine. No, because the other thing too is just because we budgeted doesn't mean we spent it, and that's why Wardsboro and us have all had surpluses and years we've had deficits. I mean, we budgeted for an extra teacher a few years ago and didn't need to hire him. So it's really difficult, and then, you know, when we change things, so it's gonna be a lot harder in this first year to look at exact numbers, to say nothing's changed at all, but it's pretty close. I mean, we haven't changed any programs, we haven't made any major changes in curriculum, we haven't made any changes in staffing. I mean, pretty much what Laurie did was, this budget is based on what's happening in Dover this year, what's happening in Wardsboro this year, and any recommendations that they saw that they would need for next year, like more intervention time, or there's, the central office in special education said, oh, we got some extra things we need to do, so we recommend an increase in this. So it's, yeah, I think it's nobody's gonna be able to look at something and see exactly what is being spent in each building for each thing and do a really one-to-one comparison, because it's not a one-to-one anymore, it's everything combined. Kind of pour it all in the pot, stir it up a little bit, and come up with some new numbers.
Stu.
Yes,
One other quick question.
sure.
Different topic. What percentage of the SU students are or will be in River Valleys if we're using current numbers?
Oh, what's?
See, I didn't want to go, I didn't want to go into ADMs
Well, that's-
specifically, but.
Isn't that in the budget?
Yeah, but I think we have that
18.
18%.
All right, thank you.
Because I remember that with the special ed too, I mean, it was pretty close that we had the same percentage of special ed roughly. When we do the
Well, that
12.
was IEP students, I think, who were present.
Okay,
But
I think
it,
we only spend 12% of the special ed dollars, and we have 18% of the kids between the two schools.
I think you were.
That's overall kids,
You were
not
asking overall.
specifically. Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Don Colombo? For now.
everybody good with Laurie so she can go home? Okay, so you're coming to the next meeting then?
I am coming to the next meeting, yes.
Okay, so that's gonna be in
I'm
Wardsboro.
with you guys for a while. It is in
Okay.
Wardsboro.
Thanks, Lori.
Good job, thank you. Have a good Thanksgiving.
Oh, yes, thank you. You all.
Eat lots of food.
Matt, you have the capital things too? I'm sorry, I didn't. The capital needs thing. I think Dwight has that too.
Okay, so we skipped around a little on the agenda, but members of the public, Mark, you're the only one last public standing.
Lucky me.
Yeah.
I have no further questions.
Review and approve the minutes of the November 5th, 2018 meeting. Somebody make a motion, please?
So moved.
Second. Rick seconds, Laura moved. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion moves, carries. Anita couldn't be here, she's at play practice. So this is the last chance for the annual meeting for information to the Buckeyville News. So she had sent us some paperwork, and I don't remember exactly what it was, but I think she did a really good job explaining everything. Rick, you saw it, right?
Yeah, it was pretty good, yeah. She did a good job.
So I don't have anything else from her. Old business updates on the Wardsboro campus work. So Bill isn't here. The weather kind of changed his plan, so he's not gonna be able to be here. Update on transportation committee work, that was Carrie. She's not here, but she told us she wasn't gonna be here. Matt, do you have your Dover parent for the transportation committee?
I do, yes.
Who is it?
Lisa Mandina will be representing the Dover.
Okay. And how about, you've got a bus driver?
And Helen, and I have not yet confirmed with the road commissioner,
That's critical.
but that is critical.
And do you know if Wardsboro, how they're doing?
Yes.
Yeah, you too, Karen.
Hold on a second, I have a little, I have a document with.
Oh,
Amazing.
hey, Laurie, I'm sorry, 1 second. Just, Matt. I forgot, we had something else for you too, and I don't remember if you were gonna tell us something or if you were gonna tell us next time.
Okay.
You wait for me, I'm almost
Yeah.
there.
Okay, then I'm gonna go to Laurie
Yeah,
real
go
quick.
ahead, go ahead.
Okay, so Laurie, under the budget review, we had the food, 21C, and technology. You kind of covered that. So, but just so everybody knows, because of agency, the central office being required to do all that, she moved that all into the budget under the SU.
So food is going to be in a separate fund at River Valleys. And then the piece that isn't covered by revenues and expenses, that number is in your general fund. But you're gonna have a special revenue fund that I have not built a budget for yet. But that's not a voter approved budget. The technology is now coming through the SU as a total so that we can see as an SU what we spend on technology.
So my understanding now, from when we talked the other day, so like there are not gonna be any Dover School or Wardsboro School or River Valley computers. They're gonna be Wyndham Central computers, and you guys will hand them out the way you see fit.
So the IT department, the director of IT, will be able to deploy resources based on student movement versus having computers sitting in a school that are not being used.
Okay. However, individual schools pay for those computers.
Through the agency fund, right?
No,
No.
we've never
budgeted
paid,
line items.
yeah, we've bought our own computers in Dover
Right,
with
yeah, so
Dover.
the ones that you have in your buildings
Right.
remain part of your assets, which will come into River Valleys, right?
Right,
So
okay.
your smart boards, all those things that are
So
here
you're
now.
not gonna take our smart boards and give them to somebody else?
No, no,
Okay,
no.
'cause
This
that's
is
gonna get
going-
asked.
This is a going forward.
Right, so
Process.
if throughout the district, like the River Valleys needs 20 new computers because we had 20 students move in, instead of us going and buy them, the IT person will buy 50 computers and give us 20 and West River 20 and 5 to Marlboro or whatever and 5 to Wyndham.
Right, or they will reconfigure and there's computers over here that are not being used and they can be used in a different school. Does that make sense?
Yeah, everybody good with that? And then the 21C, that's the after-school grant,
It's
right?
the after-school grant for, that Dover does not participate in, but Wardsboro does, and that is in the budget.
Okay, and there was
So that
this,
doesn't, there's no change
no
in that?
change in that? Okay,
No, there may be a change at the SU level when we start budgeting for that, but it shouldn't be a change to Wardsboro's service.
Okay.
Just maybe a change to how we budget it, but,
okay,
okay?
perfect. So those 3 things have been on there, so we're all good. And thank you.
All right. Good
Matt?
night.
Good night, Laura. So the committee has been formed. Wardsboro members are Greg Donna from the road crew, Tennille Cutler from the parents, possibly Steve Giard, is that right, from West River Transportation? Or Bernadine and Tammy. And we have Bob Holland, Lisa Mandino, Helen Stive, and I on the Dover side. We have 2 meetings scheduled, November 26th and December 10th, both at 5 p.m. The November 26th meeting is here. The December 10th meeting is in Wardsboro.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Will you just send Carrie an email because she's the board rep?
Yes, I've been in pretty close touch with her on all this, like planning the dates, and she's been pretty much doing it, so.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
She's up to speed.
New business, anybody got anything new? Mark, I think we're all set, buddy. Thank you. I just got an executive session for update on contractual. So our next meeting is December 3rd in Wardsboro, December 17th in Dover, January 7th in Wardsboro. That's probably gonna be our drop dead on the budget. It's a Monday, you should be around, right? And then, January 21st in Dover, we can actually meet again, we just won't have Laurie or Bill be able to attend, because West River's meeting is gonna be the 14th and the 21st to finalize their budget. But we could still change things. I think we have up to the 21st to get it to Andy so it can get published and put together and have a final number. Next meeting, hopefully we'll have the warning, sample warning put together too that we can get out to people. Any questions, any answers, any comments? Cool. Can somebody just make a motion to enter into an executive session for contractual? Laura moved. Do we have a second? Dwight seconds. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Matt, we'll just leave you a note.